Hey, real quick before we start the show, while editing this, I noticed there's some clipping. That's the technical word for my microphone kind of cuts out and makes these little clippy noises. If you're not a fan of that, maybe you want to skip to the next, what's this called? Podcast. But if you can endure that, there's some good information in this show. All right? Thank you. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for downloading Garden Fork Radio. It's what I call, let's call it haphazard DIY today. That's a new one. If this is your first time here, my name is Eric. I have this kind of all-around Eric's Brain DIY podcast. We talk about what I think are interesting things with my friends. I also have a YouTube channel with video versions of a lot of the stuff. Today, my friend Will from the YouTube channel The Weekend Homestead is here. Hey, sir.
Good day. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm excited you have a new microphone and the acoustics are good, and little do people know you're in your closet.
Hopefully the content is much better than normal. So
we were just talking as part of what's going to be the bonus part of the episode here about microphones and stuff. And if you're thinking about doing a podcast or a YouTube channel, whatever, start with your phone. It works just fine. But anyway, so
did you know?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, quick, did you know that there's an app called, I think it's called Boss Jack or something like that, and it's free and it helps you make podcasts on your iPhone. It's like a little studio that allows you to adjust the audio and do some of the basic functions before you post it.
Oh, so I don't need a big computer.
You do it all remote off your iPad.
Today we're going to talk about buying a cow, and then we're going to talk about makerspaces. And I don't know anything about buying a cow, but I know about makerspaces, and Will knows about basically a side of beef when you're talking about, or a half a pig or something. But the stuff we're going to talk about can apply to any buying a piece of an animal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it all started with, I'm part of a couple Facebook groups, and somebody posted a note the other day asking, saying, hey, I'm thinking of buying a cow. What are the first steps? And I started writing a response to this person to just help them out, and realized, wow, there's a lot of questions. Because then that led to dozens of different questions coming back and forth, and answered all these. And I thought, hey, maybe this would be a good topic to talk about, since people are somewhat interested in understanding where their food comes from. This is kind of a natural progression of that, because you can't really have a cow in your backyard. And then, unlike a garden where you could easily have a garden anywhere, but a cow, you just can't necessarily have it in an apartment. You know what I mean? So you have to get it from somewhere, and there's a process to it. So I thought maybe it'd be something good to talk about.
Exactly, because I actually do not eat a lot of meat anymore. I'll have it on the weekend as like a nice dinner with my friends, and I don't eat enough meat to buy a half or a quarter of a cow, but I do make a point of buying beef or pork from the farmer's market, because I know I have a much better idea of where it's coming from. And I mean, the stuff in the store unless it's certified, it's basically from a factory farm, and that I'm not really interested in supporting that. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that a lot of people get into is they think about the farmer and, how do I contact a farmer, and then, what happens from there. And actually, there's two parts to it. One is which farmer you choose, and are they reputable, and visiting the farm is always a nice thing to do if you can. And then the second part of it is the processing of it. Usually farmers don't process their own beef. They usually, grow the cattle, and then they hand you off to a second person, which is the butcher. And it's sometimes good to know that part of the equation too, because there's a lot of pieces that, there's questions that you're going to be asked that you need to know the answers to, and to understand and get the most out of what you want out of this, you kind of have to do a little bit of homework ahead of time. And that's what I think we should talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's start with something easy. So you find a farmer, and you go on Craigslist, or you go on Facebook Marketplace, or you look up online, and you find somebody locally who has a cow that's grown the way that you want it to be grown and taken care of in a field. You contact that person, and they'll sell you a cow. They'll sell you it in really a couple different fashions. One is the whole thing, which is a lot of meat, a half of one, or a quarter of one. And just so you understand, when you order a quarter of one, you're getting half of a half. You're not actually getting only the front quarter or the rear quarter, which is actually a common mistake, and something that the butcher gets a lot as a question is when people say, "Oh, I want a quarter of the cow, but I only want the back quarter." Well,
Right.
no, it's half of the cow. If let's say there's 14 steaks in the half, you would get 7 of those, and you'd be sharing it with somebody else. And actually, that's actually a good point to bring up is sometimes it's better to go in with somebody else to get a cow than just doing it on your own because let's say Eric likes to make stews and roasts and that, and I like to grill and barbecue and do that. Then I'm getting the types of meats that I want more of, and he gets more of what he's looking for. So sometimes it's good to go in with a partner, if that makes sense.
The other bonus of going in with someone is they probably have a chest freezer in their garage and you don't.
Yeah, that's a key too. You do have to think about that. I mean, when you order a quarter of a cow, easy way to think of it, it's about, and this is going to be an interesting reference, but if you know how paper comes like in a box, a ream of paper comes in a box,
Hmm.
it's usually about a foot by 2 feet by a foot tall. 1.5 of those is about a quarter of a cow, sometimes closer to 2, depending on how the hanging weight of the cow is. And then if you get a half, it's basically twice that amount. So you need to figure out where are you going to put this? And then also when you go pick it up, let's say you pick it up in the springtime and it's warm outside, how are you going to transport it home to keep it cold, especially if you have to drive an hour or two to go to the butcher? Because not necessarily all the cows are processed at a butcher shop, right in town, right down the road from you.
The other thing with that is once you have it in your freezer is how is it wrapped because it can get freezer burn after X number of days or months. I mean, freezer burned meat is not the greatest thing in the world.
Well, actually, one of the things you can do, and one of the butchers that I was using, I asked them to keep part of it fresh and part of it they wrap in butcher paper and then freeze it for you. And the reason why I asked them to keep it fresh was when I brought it home, I used my vacuum sealer and I vacuum sealed it so that then later on down the road, I can sous vide that steak or whatever it is or that roast. And I can just put the vacuum container right into the sous vide, cook it, then open it up and go. And I don't have to worry about waiting for it to defrost or any of that stuff because it's all packaged in one.
Oh, sweet. Actually, Instant Pot has come out with a version of their Instant Pot that also has a sous vide setting.
They actually have an air fryer setting too now. I don't know if you knew that.
No,
Yeah, so there's a new Instapot that you can buy an adapter top that fits on top of your Instapot that turns it into an air fryer.
I don't
Who
get
knew?
the air fryer thing, but I guess I've never experienced it. So,
In all reality, I mean, here's the secret of an air fryer. It's just a convection oven. That's all it really is. I mean, it's just basically making a very hot space and moving the air around inside of it. We use them at the restaurant all the time.
oh,
Anyways, going back to the beef thing, the first thing you need to do is figure out what you want. I mean, because beef will come in, you'll get stew meat, you could get hamburger, you could get steaks, you can get roasts, and doing a little bit of education on where this stuff comes from. You have, round steaks and you have tri-tips and you have sirloins and you have ribeyes and all these different terms out there that you've probably heard if you've ever gone to a steakhouse or stood in front of the butcher counter and looked at all the little signs. But knowing where that's all coming from will ultimately tell you kind of what you're going to get. And so if you sat down and thought, hey, I like making roasts, I like to make beef stew, I like to do these different things, and start with what you like to make and then make your decisions on how you can get it cut. Because a cow can be cut dozens and dozens of different ways and different portions and percentages. And depending on how efficient you are with your picks on your cuts will depend on what value you get out of it. I mean, technically you could buy half a cow and turn it all into a hamburger if you wanted to. And I mean, that's an option, but a lot of people don't do that. They pick a lot of different things.
you have a note here that most farmers do not process their own beef.
Correct. Yep. It comes down to farmers know farming and have all of the equipment to tend to, take care of and raise it. And then what'll happen is they'll load them into a trailer and they'll take them somewhere to the slaughterhouse, basically where the cows are slaughtered or the pigs are slaughtered. And then usually the slaughterhouse has a relationship to a butcher where they'll cut it up and process it for you. And it's just because there's a lot of regulations on how meat is handled and how it's processed and things like that. Most farmers don't have the ability to, run the farm and also run a butcher shop. So a lot of them will have you pick a farmer and then they will recommend, hey, this is the butcher that we use or where we go, or you can sign some paperwork where potentially you could take it to your own butcher, but then you're responsible for transport and it's a little bit more complicated. So it's really a two-part interview. One, finding a farmer that you like, and then two, verifying that the butcher that you're working with is someone that you trust and that they'll do a good job for you.
The Up by Me in Northwest Connecticut, there is at least one mobile USDA rated processing truck. So they can't do a lot of cows or pigs a day, but they drive right up to the farm.
Yep.
And so the cow or the pig is there's not a lot of stress involved. I mean, they're dispatched very quickly, and they're processed very quickly. And I that to me is a very attractive option rather than trucking them, halfway across the state and herding them around and a lot of chaos. I'm sure it's not chaos, but it just is a less than fun thing to think about. And the idea of actually on what's that show? Netflix series on. I'm blanking on the show. It's with she went back to North Carolina and started a restaurant in their old hometown. The friend. I'm gonna blank. I'm gonna drop this into the edit.
All right.
The chef and the farmer. Anyway, but in that TV show, they showed them they were going to process a pig, but they did it right on the farm, and the pig's just kind of walking along, and boom, they nailed the pig with I think it was a 22 to the back of the head, and the pig is down, and then it's processed right away. And to me, that's the ideal. So they're trying to do that kind of thing, at least up by my house, where they have a USDA truck that drives around.
Yep. And I mean, you can also get into scenarios where, they have hang times at the slaughterhouse and things like that, where they'll hang it and age it a certain amount and things like that. You can, get into those types of scenarios too, where, the ones where they process it right away, that's actually a little bit more rare than having them actually taken to a facility and done. Like, give you example, the farmer that we use is about, an hour and a half south of us. And then about a half hour from his farm is actually where the butcher shop is. It's actually a local one in a small town somewhere. So it works out really well. Usually when you get started with a butcher, they send you something called a cut sheet. And if you go to Google and just type in beef cut sheet or something like that, you'll find dozens of them out there. Your butcher will have one specific to their shop. But the nice thing is it's a worksheet that helps you figure out what you can get. Because give you example, you can only get so many porterhouse steaks out of your cow. You can't say, oh, I want 15 porterhouse steaks. Well, you might only be able to get 7, out of it, depending on what it is. So you fill out the worksheet and it helps answer the questions. And that kind of goes back to thinking about exactly what you want processed and how you want to, consume it, which ultimately will tell the butcher how he should do his job.
Yeah, it's not just like going to the grocery store, is it?
No, and I mean, there's little things too, like give you example, most people will take flank steak, which is, part of the cow, and they'll have it turned into hamburger. But what people don't know is actually you can make a really great steak out of a flank steak. And when I called my butcher and said, yeah, I want the flank steak wrapped this way and stored, he's like, oh, you like to barbecue, don't you? And like he knew exactly kind of what I was doing, and that kind of made me feel more comfortable that he knew those things, or like why I wanted a tri-tip cut a certain way, those types of things, which I'm kind of a little bit more on the advanced side because I use my stuff mostly for grilling and cooking out and entertaining. But, for an average family, they might not want a tri-tip or a brisket wrapped a certain way or those types of things. But ultimately knowing that those things are available, and if you say, nope, I want it all hamburger, you might be taking very good parts of the beef that could be used for something in your household and just turning it into hamburger and kind of, I don't want to say wasting it, but ultimately, you could easily take a filet and turn it into a hamburger if you wanted. It'd be a really nice hamburger.
Yeah. The TV show that I was having a blank on is A Chef's Life, starring Vivian Howard, who started the restaurant called Chef and the Farmer. And there's an episode there where they're on their friend's farm, and that's where they butchered the pig. So it only took me 3 minutes for my brain to click in.
There you go. The last part of it, I guess I tell people is expect it takes time. Give you example, it takes time for them to raise a cow. It takes them time to process it. It's not something where you just show up to the farm and be like, I'll take that one. And then, the next day they show up and here's all your beef. For us, we ordered our stuff usually in July is when we contact the farmer. And then in October is when they go to the butcher. And then the butcher usually takes, 30 days to do it. And then they'll say, hey, between October 30th and November 5th, you can come pick it up. And then you just drive out to their facility. And there's multiple people you pay in this process too, which a lot of people don't realize is they might go, oh, my cow was $350 or $530 for a half a cow. But then what you don't realize is you also pay the butcher maybe $75 to process it. And then if you have specialty things you ask for, like, oh, I want it wrapped this way or I want it done, there might be additional charges there. So make sure you ask for that stuff up front.
The other thing is they might be actually making the butcher might be making your half a cow a little light on some of the more prime cuts. They might be holding them back.
Right. I mean, that's a real simple thing. And that actually happened to me at one point. I had ordered, I like New York strip. That's one of my favorite
Mine too.
steaks to cut. But what a lot of people don't realize is like a porterhouse steak has two parts to it. So let's say your cow has, you get 14 steaks at an average size. Well, I got my 14 New York strips. But what I didn't realize was I said, "Oh, I don't care about the rest." Well, what I didn't realize was I was giving away the filet mignon, which is the actual other side of a porterhouse. So one half of a porterhouse is New York strip, and the other half is the filet. So I said, "Oh yeah, just make the rest into hamburger," not realizing that I just told them to make, the most expensive and probably the most prime cut inside of a steak or inside of a cow into hamburger, and I didn't realize it because I just didn't know. So if I did a little bit better research, I probably would have known the right things to ask.
The other point that just popped in my head because that is Garden Fork Radio is that if you don't want to buy a half a cow, you can sign up for a meat CSA probably in your town. There's probably a farmer who is raising cows and selling them, but they has a CSA, so you buy in the late winter or spring, and throughout the year you get delivered once a month or whatever X number of cuts of beef.
Well, not only beef, because a lot of the meat CSAs actually go with the season. So give you an
Right.
example, the one CSA that we had looked at had beef during the summer, and then in the fall there was some pork products, and then when we got close to Thanksgiving, there was turkey breasts, and there was different things that you can get throughout the CSA of being part of it because maybe the farmer does a number of different things. And that's a good way, especially if you have a smaller family or if you want to try a bunch of different things and you don't want to commit to getting 300 pounds of beef. Some of those things are also options out there.
I have two friends that bought half a pig together, and about halfway through the summer, they basically said, "We're getting a little tired of eating pig." So, and they have families, with kids. So think about it. It's kind of like when you go to the Costco and you realize you bought a whole case of baked beans, and you're like, "I'm getting a little tired of eating baked beans here." So the CSA, the meat CSA, sounds a lot more attractive to me.
Well, the beauty of it too is a lot of the folks that offer vegetable CSAs have relationships with farms that offer the meat side of it. So when you get involved with a CSA, you might have the veggie side of it because that's the part that you're supporting. But then on top of that, a lot of them will have the offerings where they'll pick certain parts of the cuts, or they'll have, hey, for the month of November, the month of July, if you wanted, you could get some New York strip steaks at a discounted rate and buy part of it as kind of the group.
Neat. So if anyone has more questions, they can ask us, or if you have something to help, suggest, comment, radio@gardenfork.tv. One thing, I actually have to eat steak today because I am donating blood tomorrow at the hospital where my friend is getting his chemotherapy. And I was like, I usually go to the Red Cross, but while it's being treated, I'm like, well, they're keeping the guy alive, so I'll give him some of my blood. But it helps to have a higher iron content, and steak is a good way to boost the iron content in your blood.
Well, let me ask you something quick about the giving blood. So let's say I don't live near a metropolitan area and I want to give blood. How do you find out where a place is or time or even how it works?
Go to redcrossblood.org or redcross.org and click on donate, and they have a mobile donation system, basically. In my house upstate, twice a summer, they roll into town with a cube truck, unload in the town hall with cots and all the sterility machines, everything. Basically, it's a blood donor room that's mobile, and they set up, and 30 of us show up, and we donate blood twice a summer there. So if you're not near an urban area, it's very likely that either in a local school or a college or a church, there's going to be a blood donation event.
Can anybody give blood, or I mean, is there like an age limit or like a certain, like you have to be so old or you can't be so old or anything like that?
You can't be taking certain medications, and there are a couple of rules about it, and some of them you might shake your head at, but they have to be so careful with the blood supply. If one thing goes awry, you could be giving out 100,000 units of blood, and one of them goes awry and hurts somebody. Then that word of mouth with the social media that we have nowadays, that could doom the whole blood donor system. This is just my opinion. So yeah, you might shake your head at some of the reasons that people can't donate, but and there's a pre-qualification list on the Red Cross site that you can go through.
So just like you can get your beef cut list, you can get a qualification list of all the stuff before you donate blood.
Right. One of the things is like if you take the hair baldness medication Propecia, you can't donate blood.
Good to know.
Yeah. So I'm losing my hair and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm not going to take anything for it. So
I'm amazed at how fast hair turns gray. Like I turned 40 and all of a sudden I woke up one day and I'm like, whoa, it looks like I've got blonde highlights, but it's actually gray hair, which is pretty amazing.
We'll just call it blonde highlights for you.
Exactly.
Hey, would you like more of Garden Fork or more of Eric? Would you like to get it in your email inbox? I send out, just about every week, I send out a little email about Eric's World and new stuff I posted. I even talk about podcasts I've listened to or just interesting stuff. And usually, almost always, at least one picture of the Labradors, Henry and Charlie. You can get that by signing up for Eric's Garden Fork email newsletter thing. There should be a link in the notes to this show. Just scroll down to the description of the podcast in your app, and I hope it's a clickable link. It should be. Or go to gardenfork.tv, and on almost every page at the top of the page should be a sign up. If you're on a mobile device, you might have to tap on there's a little menu bar, and then hopefully there it'll be a sign up, or scroll the bottom of a post and you can sign up there. Should be a link in the app here. More of Eric. It would be fun to have you along for the ride. It's kind of more brain dump Eric. Cool stuff. All right? So switching gears, you were asking me by text about all these questions about Makerspace, and I'm like, I can't answer all this by text.
Well, you did pretty good. You answered two of them, then you called me and you're like, okay, we got to talk about this because you have to stop. It's 11 o'clock at night. I need to go to bed. What my question really started with was you had mentioned in a podcast previously you're going to this makerspace, and I started looking at it trying to figure out like what exactly is a makerspace? Like, do you walk in and it's a giant warehouse full of stuff, or is it like little rooms, or like, and what do they have in there? Like, what can you make? Like, is it just for people who do woodworking, or like what types of hobbies and stuff? So I thought, let's start there. Like, what is a makerspace?
All of that. It really depends on the space. The first makerspace I came across was called NYC Resistor, who some of my internet tech friends started. Just really good parties, basically. That's why I would go there. But they have a electronics focus. They're about creating things that are Arduino or Raspberry Pi controller based. These little mini computers on a chip. And the first thing they did was build a machine that made cocktails. But they also had classes teaching people how to solder, how to code. So that theirs is a very electronics oriented one. But then the makerspace that I go to now is called Makerspace NYC, I think. But it's here in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn Army Terminal. If you know that building, it's a pretty famous building architecturally, actually. And they're a more full-blown makerspace. It has a wood shop. It has a metal fabrication shop. It has 3D printing. It has a CNC router cutter with a 4x8 table. And it also has a sewing and embroidery and t-shirt printing section as well, which I found very interesting. And then you can't just walk in and sign up and say, I want to use the table saw. You have your choice of daily, monthly, or a yearly membership. And then to use any of the machinery or the workstations, you have to take a safety class or prove in some way that you already know how to use that equipment. Like if you have a wood shop, you could take pictures of your wood shop and some of the things you've made and say, I've done this. Could I use your wood saw? I'm putting words in the mouth of the makerspace here. But like I wanted to learn to be a better welder, so I took a welding class there. And it wasn't cheap. It was $300 for 3 sessions or 4 sessions, but it was all of 5 people with a teacher, Emily, who's going to be on the podcast actually soon. And now I can go use they have MIG welders there. If I take the TIG class, which is to weld with like stainless steel, I could then use the TIG welder for a daily fee or a monthly or weekly fee. So the hurdle is a little high on the get-go, but then you've got all this great machinery and you don't have to fix any of it, which is really nice.
Well, okay, but answer this for me then. Like, so is it open is it like Anytime Fitness where I can go work out at 3 a.m, or is it
No, they
only
have set
open during
hours.
certain time? They do. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think their insurance requires that someone be there to call 911, you know?
Well, but are there people there to help you? So like you say, hey, I want to do this woodworking project, but is there a guy over in the corner you can go over and say, hey, I'm trying to make this cut. You got any suggestions? Like, do they do that? Or is it you're on your own and there's the machinery?
You're on your own, but there is a camaraderie there. One of the women that I was taking the welding class with is she's a really amazing creator, but she creates things out of wood. I guess you just call her a carpenter, but like the one project she was working on in the wood shop was making a set of shelves for a client in an apartment, and that they wanted that kind of library ladder that slides on the rollers, you know?
Sure.
And so she was building these shelves in the wood shop, but also wanted to learn how to do welding because she's having more metal work incorporated into her creations. And so you get to know people, and I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. It's like, hey, what are you doing? And you can learn from that. So there is a camaraderie, but it's not like you can go to the front desk and say, how do I make this dado cut? You know?
What's a dado cut?
Yeah. See,
Exactly.
it's a notch. It's wider than the regular saw blade. So if you want it, like a dado cut can be like a 1/4 inch wide or 3/4 inch wide. So you use what's called dado blades for that. I don't know why it's called dado, but
I guess my last question would be, do you bring your own stuff? Like thinking of the lady who was making the roller rack, do they have wood that you can buy there, or do you have to bring all your own? Like, how does that work? Do you stop at Home Depot and pick up a bunch of wood and go to the makerspace, or do they have like, hey, there's some plywood that you can buy and it's whatever dollars a sheet or something?
it depends on the space. This one, I'm pretty sure you have to bring the wood in, but like to work in the metal shop, they have metal fabrication classes that they have to buy rolling stock for. These basically bulk pieces of metal, 2-inch square pieces or flat stock. So you can, if you're a member, they send out an email and go, hey, it's Emily. I think Emily does the metal order. We're going to order from the company in New Jersey. If you want to add to the order, let me know. And then you just go down there and you pay them for yours. So the bulk order comes in, and if you are going to build something, your order comes as well on the same truck. So, and in New York City, that's great because not everyone has a pickup truck to go buy steel for their project,
Yeah, or you end up like, I've done projects where you buy a piece of material and you need an 1.5 or 2-inch piece, and you have to buy an 8-foot length. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with, 7 more feet of mahogany? And I'm not going to, you know what I mean? You run into those scenarios. So I'm wondering, how does that work? Do you have a, take a piece, leave a piece kind of scenario where people have stuff available to get to or not?
I don't know because I haven't taken any of the wood classes, but I was thinking about doing that. I like it because it's near my house, and it would be kind of what they call that third place, that kind of common meeting area. And the people I took the welding class with were very interesting people. I'm like, wow, if they hang out here, that would be fun. So, because I work from home, I need to get out of the house.
Sure.
My office and my bedroom are 10 feet away, so it's like I need to roll out of bed and put on clothes and go somewhere.
We've talked about in previous shows. Best thing to do every morning.
Yes. So and it's weird. this makerspace I didn't know about for a couple of years, and they've been there, and I'm like, why did I not know about that? And sometimes search engines are not very good at discovering makerspaces in your area. So maybe ask around, look online. I'm not quite sure how to find one other than Googling it. But I was looking for a welding class, and I finally discovered this one after looking for months. And I'm like, why didn't this show up first in my search? But I'm not sure why.
Well, I think it's also a great opportunity to meet like-minded people. I mean, if you're looking to hang out with people who are in metalworking, going to the local bar probably isn't the best place. But if you go to the makerspace where other people are making stuff, probably likely to find more people that are kind of into things that you're looking at doing.
Yeah, there's also near me is a metal collective, and they are not a makerspace. It's a group of very interesting people who have a shared space, and I don't know if they really offer it to other people, but I've been over there, but it's not the same thing. But they do have more of a camaraderie there. That's it's it's a very interesting place. Let's just say that it's very Brooklyn. Let's just say that a lot of tattoos all the way up and down people's arms and stuff. So
I don't even know what to say to that.
yeah, I don't have any tattoos, so
That could be a DIY video for you.
yeah, no, I'm fine with the blood donation needle, but it's one needle and it's in there about 15 minutes.
Here's a did you know fact about tattoos. There was a discussion on Reddit of which technology has stayed around the longest without being changed. And what it was determined was actually the tattoo pen, the electric pen, was actually the item that is still being used today, back from when it was originally invented and not really changed very much. And originally it was a design for an electric pen that somebody was designing for writing, and then they figured out that it could be used for tattooing, and that's still what they use today.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's worth the price of admission right there.
There you go. Look at that.
All right, everyone. If you have any questions for us, it's radio@gardenfork.tv. If you are a patron of Garden Fork, there's more information about that in the show notes of the show. Will and I are going to stick around and do the bonus content for the supporters of Garden Fork. So go out and do cool stuff. Make it a great day, and we will see you later. Garden Fork Radio's executive producer is Jimmy Goots. You can find more information about Jimmy and the custom hollow books he makes at hollowbooks.com. Our theme music is used under license from uniquetracks.com. Other music used in the show is used under license from audioblocks.com.